Gazile here. So it is super cold and windy outside today, and I thought it was a perfect day to sit down and show you my seed stash for this year. Now I did try to organize the seeds in some sort of logical way, and I decided to make a separate video for all of my native plant seeds because otherwise this video may get too long. And the rest of the seeds I organized from the easiest to a little bit more difficult to grow or more like specialty plants. Oh my goodness, look what you brought. You're so cute. Are you stealing my show? You are stealing my show, aren't you? You can settle down. Settle down, baby. It's okay. And this group right here are some of the easiest annuals to grow from seed. And I will start with zinnias. It took me a while to warm up to zinnias because they are kind of pedestrian and everywhere. But after I realized just how easy they are to grow and how easy they are to use to fill in those gaps in the flower beds, and also that they're great cut flower and last for a very long time in bouquets, I was sold. Especially with the variety of colors that we have right now with all the choices. So the ones that I'm growing this year are Oklahoma Salmon and Queenie Lime with Blush, which are both absolutely beautiful colors. Now, the one thing about zinnias is that they are frost sensitive, so you have to start them after the last danger of frost has passed. And I do my zinnias in 2 successions per summer. So I start them around May time. So that's my first flush of blooms, and another succession around mid-July. So that's my second succession. We do have a problem with powdery mildew on zinnias in our climate, and unfortunately on a lot of other plants. You can always treat these with fungicides or like a milk diluted solution. I don't treat mine. I just cut them for my bouquets and I strip all of the leaves. So you would never even know that they had mildew. Calendula is also one of the easiest annuals to grow from seed, and I grow my calendula in the vegetable garden as an aphid trap crop. And calendula has so many benefits. So you can use it in the vegetable garden to kind of steer away the aphids from everything else. Some people use it as a medicinal plant, and it's also a great cut flower. Now, I was staying away from calendula for a while as well because the traditional colors were kind of like these yellow, like a canary yellow, burn your corneas in your face colors. But now they come in these beautiful peachy colors, and they are double. Another thing that is really cool about calendula is that they are frost tolerant. So when I started my second succession of calendula last fall, they were blooming all the way into December, which is amazing. Another super easy annual to grow is alyssum, and I'm growing 2 different types this year. One is Benthami, not sure how to pronounce it, and another one is Violet Queen. Such an easy flower. You can grow it any way you want. You can start it inside in cells, you can direct sow it, you can do winter sowing. And alyssum is such an overachiever. Winter sowing, it is the first flower to germinate for me, and it's also the first flower to bloom. Sometimes they will bloom right in the bottles. So by the time I plant them out in the landscape, they fill out so quickly. The only thing is that they do prefer cooler weather, so they perform the best in the spring to kind of early summer, and then again in the fall. So you can do 2 successions of sowing that way. You can tuck these plants in the front border of the flower beds. Also great for containers. This one is Ageratum, and a lot of people are surprised as to how easy it is to grow Ageratum from seed. Yes, you can buy flats of Ageratum in a local nursery, but they are those like really small, kind of 6x6. They don't get bigger than that, puny plants. I like my plants to sprawl around my beds. So the Blue Planet that I'm growing this year, and I've grown many times before, is a beautiful Ageratum. It does take a bit of space. It's about 2 feet by 2 feet, and it actually makes a great cut flower as well. Super easy to start from seed. It is frost sensitive, so you have to plant it out after the last frost danger has passed. But definitely try this. It is such a great filler for those pockets in the flower beds after your bulbs stop blooming and you just don't know what to plant there. This is a great solution. Coleus, and this one is kind of unusual because most people grow coleus either from cuttings or just get them in a nursery, but they are super easy to grow from seed. They do take quite a while to mature and look like a real plant before you plant them out in the landscape. So I'm actually going to start mine this week to make sure that I have decent looking plants. But I love this variety. It's called Pineapple Surprise. They have these interesting kind of like green and dark foliage. And I love coleus in general because I have a lot of shady areas in my garden, so I can pop some color both in containers and in my flower beds with coleus because they come in such an array of beautiful colors. So definitely give this a try. They are not fussy at all. Again, you just have to start them a little bit earlier. And also they're very, very cold sensitive. So not just frost sensitive, but cold sensitive. They despise temperatures below 50 degrees. So wait until your temps stabilize in the spring and then you can plant them out. So the next group of plants I kind of went a little overboard with, and it is tobacco or Nicotiana. And I love Nicotiana because it is, first of all, really easy to grow. You can start it inside in cell trays. You can start it winter sowing. You can direct sow it. And there are those types of flowers that are great filler for flower beds. I love their romantic kind of fluffy, airy look because a lot of times in our gardens we have those bolder looking flowers like the hydrangeas or dahlias, and I feel like they needed to be mixed up with something a little bit more airy, and Nicotiana does precisely that. So the varieties that I got this year are all different colors and different heights. The first one is Bronze Queen, and I love this one. I've grown this one before. I actually planted it in the pot by our kitchen door. It was northern exposure, so I paired it up with some eucharis. And it did receive maybe 1 hour of sunlight per day, but it performed amazing. And that's another reason why I love Nicotiana so much is it can take different range of light conditions, anywhere from full sun to part sun to shade. It wouldn't do well in full kind of darkness, but dappled shade it does really well in. But the Bronze Queen has these chocolatey looking beautiful flowers. It is about 2 to 3 feet tall, so it's a perfect kind of container plant. Another one is Select Watercolors, and has these beautiful range of amazing pastel looking like flowers. And another thing that they do mention here is the flower color changes as the flowers fade. And that's what I noticed on a lot of Nicotiana as well. They kind of start blooming purple and then they turn pink. So it's a really, really fun flower to grow. This one is about 3 to 4 feet high. This one is Starlight Dancer, and I can see this being really great flower for a moon garden or a garden that you spend a lot of time in the evenings. And it is a cross between Lansdorffii and Jasmine Tobacco. So I can imagine it smells really, really good. And all of the Nicotianas actually attract a lot of moths that come out at night to pollinate the flowers. And it is great because we are trying to support the pollinators. This one is Cranberry Isles. Again, beautiful pastel-y, kind of purple, white, and pink colors that we all love so much. It is 3 to 4 feet high, kind of middle of the border plant. And this says that it's fragrant as well, attracts hummingbirds and moths, which is really great. Langsdorff Tobacco, I've grown this one so many times, It self-seeded in my garden for a while and it kind of disappeared. I do want this back because it's just such a beautiful flower. This lime green color actually cools a lot of other colors. So I had this one in the island bed in front of our house, where Michael prefers to grow a lot of the brighter flowers like the oranges and the yellows and the reds. And I really felt like I needed to cool that down, and Langsdorff's tobacco did just that. I just interplanted a lot of the bed with this and it looked a lot more cohesive. Tobacco Perfume Deep Purple, I've also grown this one. Beautiful flower. It is only 2 feet high, so it's a great front of the border Nicotiana. A great cut flower, fragrant as well. This one is Bella, and Bella is tall. She is 5 to 6 feet tall, kind of the back of the border, kind of peeking through other plants. Beautiful flower. And the last one is Select Night Flight, also a tall gal, 5 to 6 feet tall. Now the flowers right here look really red. When I looked it up online, they were more kind of maroon, cooler red to me. And I do try to incorporate a little bit more color into my pastel looking like flower borders this year. So I think this one will be perfect. The next group of plants are a little bit more difficult to grow. I wouldn't say they're super hard, but they require a little bit more nuance in growing them. And the first ones are asters or China asters. And interestingly, China asters are the first flowers I've ever grown. I was still a kid and they worked so well for me. And this is what I hear about China asters. They either perform really well or don't perform at all. And from my experience, I feel this is has to do with the seed quality, because sometimes they have really poor germination, but if you get a good seed quality and if you sow them correctly, they will germinate almost 100%. And I usually start China asters about 6 to 8 weeks before our last frost. Once they germinate, once they start growing, they're really not fussy. They last for a long time in outside flower borders and also as a cut flower, 2 to 3 weeks in my experience. And they come in all sorts of different colors and shapes. They're kind of like dahlias. You really can fall into the rabbit hole of China aster growing. But the ones that I'm growing this year are Souffle Light Pink and King Size Apricot. This group of plants are very similar in the way you grow them. They're all different plants, but these are what's called cool flowers. And I do have the book Cool Flowers that Danielle with North Lawn Flower Farm recommended, and I love it. But these flowers do prefer cooler weather and kind of similar in the way you start them. So I will start with Nigella, which is so pretty. I love this plant. This one is Persian Jewel Indigo. And I love Nigella because it is an annual. So, you know, it kind of disappears after a year, but it looks decorative even before it blooms. I love that dill-like foliage. And after it blooms, it has those really cool seed heads that you can dry, you can use in your arrangements. And while it's blooming, it is so beautiful with those cloud-like little puffy flowers. You can start Nigella different ways. I usually started winter sowing because it does prefer cool weather, but you can also direct sow it in the fall in my zone 7, New Jersey. It does really well. That way it forms rosettes and then it blooms the following year. You can do the same thing with larkspur. And the ones that I'm growing this year are Blue Cloud, which is new to me, but I looked it up and it does look like a beautiful blue cloud. And Fancy Blue Purple, which I've grown before many, many times. This color is like nothing else. It is truly this electric blue that shines in the garden. It is so stunning, just unbelievable. So larkspur, I also grow 2 ways, winter sowing, which I'm going to do this year. I'm going to probably start them this week. but also direct sowing in the fall around September time, which does really well in my area, again, just as Nigella does. So they form those little clumps of plants, and then they bloom around May time in my area, and the flowers are amazing. They're this tall. I work them in the borders. They're just this beautiful, romantic, cottagey like look. Orleia is the same thing. You can start it in the fall, you can start it winter sowing, and I love, love, love those umbel-shaped like flowers. I'm a sucker for umbel-shaped flowers like the angelica, the yarrow, the orleia, amidara. I already started orleia because they do really well winter sowing. And then the last one is poppy. This is Lauren's grape. Now, again, poppies and a lot of the self-seeders that other people complain about, just don't self-seed in my garden because I do work my soil so much and I do mulch it, so it prevents a lot of the self-seeders from coming back. But I did have a couple of the Lauren's grapes come back last year, and they were so beautiful. I love this poppy because even before it blooms, again, just like with Nigella, I love that powdery blue color of the foliage, and the buds forming are also really pretty. I do started winter sowing as well. It does really well. And you can start it inside the house, but I just don't want to spend the space or the lights. Let's level up with the next group of plants. And the first category in this group are foxgloves or digitalis. And I wouldn't say digitalis is that difficult to grow, is that you just have to remember that some of them are biennial, some of them are short-lived perennial, and some of them do bloom the same year. So in this case, I do have all of the kinds I just mentioned, and the first one is Dalmatian peach, which is a beautiful color. These bloom the same year, but the one thing that you have to remember is that you have to start them early to have the blooms, like let's say by June time. So I actually started mine already there in the basement in the trays. You have to start them about 10 to 12 weeks before your last frost date. But other than that, they don't really require any special treatment. Now these three I've actually never grown before, but they looked very interesting and different. And when I showed it to my mom, she's like, why are they so ugly? I said, they're not ugly, they're different. And they're more subtle instead of, you know, the brighter colors that we have of foxgloves on the market. But this one, the first one is Rusty Foxglove or Gigantea Gelber Herald. And it says here that they're elegant spires with amber bells marked with trace of brown, which is kind of interesting. And this is short-lived perennial. This one is milk chocolate, which is so cool looking. And it's a great woodland edge flower for June borders. This is also a short-lived perennial. And sunset. This one is gorgeous, and I read a little bit more about this one. It does like very sunny and dry conditions, which is kind of unusual for a foxglove. So this one I'm actually going to plant out in the sidewalk border. Okay, let's talk about the rest of the plants in this category, and the first one is cobea or cup and saucer vine. I've grown cup and saucer vine for a long, long time, and I learn something new every time. So for example, right here in the seed packet, it said that you have to start it inside 6 to 8 weeks before last frost, and that's actually too late for me. When I was doing that, the plants would not bloom until September. I really would like them to bloom July time. So now I start them 10 to 12 weeks before our last frost or before I have to plant it out. Another thing, these are very frost sensitive, so you do have to wait until the temperature settles to really warm temps before you plant it out. And I usually grow these in front of our house. I use a fish line for it to run up the door, which is very, very pretty. Even before it starts blooming, I love the foliage, the way the foliage looks. Another thing that I learned is that it is very helpful to pinch this plant when it's about 3 feet tall. So it creates a lot of lateral growth and becomes a lot bushier and produces a lot more flowers. But again, other than that, it is not that difficult. And let's talk about the amaranth dreadlocks, which is one of my favorite plants. It is just such a conversation starter in the garden. I grow it kind of everywhere. And once you start growing amaranth, unless you work your beds or you mulch them a lot, you will always have them. You will always have them self-seed in the garden. Again, because I work my beds and I mulch them, they disappeared. I only had 1 dreadlocks last year, which was a bummer, so I'm trying to bring them back. Amaranths are kind of difficult to start in my experience. They have tiny seeds, and when the seedlings germinate, they're also very, very small. They take a long time to grow, so I prefer to start them indoors in seed trays and kind of baby them for a while. They're small for number of months, like 2 inches or so, but once our heat sets in, they grow so much and so fast. By July time, they're like 6 feet tall suddenly, and by September, they're 8 feet tall, which is unbelievable. But I am growing another variety this year. This is Green Tails Amaranth, and both of these are really great in bouquets. And as I mentioned, the dreadlocks look amazing in landscapes. It does say here that their mature size is only 3 to 5 feet. Mine have grown to 8 feet easily. And the last 2 here, I've never grown before, so we're kind of going to learn together on how these perform. I've seen both of these flowers in other people's gardens. I admired them, but now I want to try them myself. This one is Bee Balm Lemon Bergamot, which is a beautiful little flower. It does say here that you can start it indoors 8 weeks before last frost. This is a hardy annual, which means that it tolerates cold weather. And this one is Xeranthemum Paper Flower Double Mixture. And this one also 5 to 8 weeks before last frost, and harden the seedlings off. Great for cut flower, so really excited about this one. Now before we go to more of the advanced flowers, I wanted to mention that I have some dahlia seeds that I'm going to start this year. Sarah from Sarah's Cottage Creations sent me some dahlia seeds, and I think these are so fun, but I haven't grown dahlia from seed for about 15 years. I usually grow them from tubers. So I'm a little nervous about it. I know it's not that difficult, but I will be starting them either this week or the following week. All right, let's talk about some of the more advanced flowers. The first one is stock. And again, stock is not that difficult to grow or germinate or start growing from seed. Doesn't need any pre-treatment. But the thing in my area is that we don't really have that cool, prolonged spring that stock really likes. We go from cold winter to a really hot summer. We maybe have 2 weeks of spring. So to catch that a cooler time of the year, I actually have to start stock way earlier than what they recommend on the seed packet. And I think you have to think about your own climate with all of these plants here as to how are they going to perform in your particular region, because we all live in different spaces. So for me, with experimenting with stock for a number of years now, I found that I have to start it way earlier and I have to plant it out in the landscape way earlier as well. But it's absolutely beautiful. It smells amazing. It looks really good in bouquets. It's edible. And the varieties that I'm growing this year are High Quartet Cherry. Now this variety actually is tolerant of more hot weather, but this is the first time I'm growing it, so I'm going to see how it performs. Another variety that I have here are Stock's Rose Pink, Stock's Antique Rose, and The other ones are Cat's Apricot. Now, the Cat's series, what I find with them, and I've grown these before, is that they tend to be a lot more floppy than the other varieties. I don't know if it's just me and I don't have enough light, but when I planted the Iron series, these were just so beautiful, absolutely straight, never flopped. And as for the Iron varieties, I have Iron Blue, Iron Rose Pink, and Iron Purple. Here are the diva of starting plants from seed, Lisianthus. So Lisianthus is interesting, also not a very difficult flower to grow once it matures. It can take a lot of different conditions, but it is kind of hard to start from seed, and it is very slow to mature. You can go as far as 6 months from starting your seed to seeing any blooms. A lot of gardeners just don't have the patience for that. I'm actually a very patient person in general, so I love growing Lisianthus. About 2 to 3 weeks ago, and they germinated quite quickly. I think it took about 7 to 10 days. The one thing to remember is that they come as a pelleted seed because they're so small. In order for you to sow them, you have to see them. So pelleted seeds are the best. You have to break up that coat with some water in order for them to germinate. So make sure after you sow them that you keep the seed coat moist so it breaks down, it exposes the seed so it can start germinating. I do use heat mats. They prefer a lot of heat during the germination, and then I turn the heat mats off, but they will grow. And the thing about Lisianthus is that they actually develop a very extensive root system. While nothing is really happening above ground, their root system is enormous. When you bump them up in larger containers, you will notice that they were actually producing a lot of roots during their development. But other than the germination and waiting for them for a very long time to mature, it's not very fussy flower. They're not fussy about soil. They do like full sun exposure. They're actually very cool loving flower. The ones that I grew from seed last year lasted all the way to December. And I had some survivors even in January with below freezing weather. So again, you just have to wait for that for that period when they're maturing, and then you are good to go. But the varieties that I'm growing this year are so gorgeous. So this one is Roseanne Terracotta, which is unreal. In my opinion, the color is just unreal. And so is the Black Pearl, another unbelievable color. By the way, this one, almost 100% germination. Then I have Corelli Pink, Voyage Pink, which I grew last year, so beautiful, and Dublini Blue. So I cannot wait to see all of these flowers, and of course the question is, where am I going to plant them? A lot of the cut flowers, kind of like the designated cut flowers, I'm actually going to plant in the grow bags I have by my front door. I grew some tomatoes there last year, and tomatoes didn't really do that well because I think the volume of soil was not enough. But I think it will be perfect for the cut flowers because I actually grew all of my Lisianthus last year in pots. I don't think I had any in the landscape, and they performed so well. You can actually plant them really close, up to 5 inches together. So you can have a beautiful pot with some Lisianthus, some stock, and other cut flowers that I have in here. So that is my plan, to have a small cut flower garden right here outside our front door, and then incorporate a lot of the other flowers that I showed you, like the Nicotianas and the cool flowers and the digitalis in the flower beds. I'm so excited. I know some of these plants will perform amazing. Some will be fails, which is, it is cold gardening, but I am looking forward to it. And thank you so much, you guys, for watching this video, and look out for the video about the native plants that I'm starting from seed this year, and a lot of these I already started. But again, thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.